the
me
beginning.
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. And then we could do
Okay,
the
we'll
3,
be.
2, 1.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Da-da-da-da-da. Welcome to the Astrid Show.
Welcome to the Astrid Show. Welcome to the Astrid. No, this is the
Oh,
Astrid
goodness.
podcast. We're not really a podcast yet, but we're trying it
Hello.
out. And we just want to
But we're
interview.
getting there. Don't worry.
Yeah, and we're just
Yes,
here.
it's the pre-test podcast. That's it.
Yes, there it is. There it is.
So we're here to interview some of our
Yikes.
founders, the founders of Astrith, and talk about what is Astrith? How did we get here? Where are we going? Why do you want to get involved? This is all going to be informative, and you're going to hear from Enchanter today, who's one of our founders that is in the legal department. We call them blobs. We're just calling them blobs because, and Enchanter's going to speak more on this, but we don't want any kind of hierarchy in our company eventually. So we're looking at self-managed business structures. And since we're not officially adopting a structure yet, we're just calling them blobs because people will float in and out of them as their skills allow. Some people might be in legal and design. And so let's jump into the interview with Enchanter, who is right now in the legal blob for the most part. Enchanter. And Witch Hat is here leading our marketing blob. And she's going to be taking over the most of the interview. I'm Brave. I'm one of the founders that's been here from the beginning of the Discord that Tall Girl started. And I'll just be jumping in as support, as laughter, as part of the conversation. Take it away, Witch Hat.
She's our
Thank
MC
you.
Brave.
That's right.
Yes, thank you, Brave. I'm sure all that stuff about blobs was completely clear to the audience, and
Absolutely.
they understood it all.
Yes.
Excellent. Oh, I'm
And
so
if you
excited.
don't, it's
I'm
okay.
so
By the end of
excited.
this, you still won't know.
There's actually a funny story about blobs. I should probably tell you this because this will lead into all the other interviews. There's the funny story of how the name blob came about. We were in one of the founder chats just talking about things, and we were talking about the possibility of holacracy or a self-managed business, and somebody was like, well, we shouldn't use the terms from holacracy until we actually read about it, understand it, and train everybody on it, just so there's no confusion in this interim time of what that means eventually when we actually get trained on it. So instead of circles, which is what you would call the teams, or whatever that department, what would traditionally be called a department, we didn't want to use the word department because that's very corporate. And so being a bunch of D&D fantasy buffs, I especially as a DM, of course my brain goes to like the gelatinous cubes and gelatinous monsters, and I'm like, well, it's kind of like amorphous right now. It doesn't have shape, so let's call them blobs. And Enchanter seconded that idea and got the rest of the group on board.
Absolutely.
And then
I loved it.
Were you the one that came up with
We're 1,000% on board.
Were you the one that came up with the acronym afterwards? We're like blobs of influence instead of spheres of influence. And you're like, yeah, boys.
Yes. Yes, because someone said that, oh, it's a BOI. And I was like, hey, boy, how you doing?
So, yeah.
Oh, I absolutely loved it.
So we all work in different, and volunteer for now, in different blobs of influence, and there's a lot of permeability. We get to go in and out. And so that's one of the exciting pieces of Astrith and this thing that we're building.
Yeah. We're not trying
Absolutely, and I'm excited to talk about it some more.
Yeah. That's one thing that will become clear.
Excellent. Well,
as we do these interviews, is like how different our company is going to be. Which, go ahead, take it away. There's a little bit of a delay, so I apologize if my voice comes in a second over you. It's not because I'm trying to, it's the delay.
Yes, we do have to work that out and work around that a little bit. I hope it's not on my end. Anyway, so, Enchanter, tell us about yourself. How did you find this craziness? Did you help make it? Tell us about this project.
Absolutely. I will personally never say that I helped make it, but I will definitely say that I put a stone on the little pathway that is allowing us to go forward. So Asterith was essentially, before it was even Asterith, it was just a TikTok video from Tall Girl that I happened to scroll by on, as everyone does, TikTok, and just mindless doom zooming. No, doom scrolling. Oh no, I'm not cool anymore. I'm sorry, I'm showing my age. So essentially, I was just on TikTok. I saw her video and I got intrigued. I didn't hear anything about it prior, and she really was the person that kind of helped volumize it. And when I got in and I saw what was going on in the Discord, I was like, okay, okay. I think there was at the time that I entered maybe like a couple hundred people, and then within like literally within a blink of an eye, it jumped to I think it was somewhere around 3,000 people. Two or 3,000. It was crazy. But
Wow.
I mean, that's essentially how I got in, and it was it. It's honestly been such a wild ride to think about where we started and where we are right now. And I'm super stoked to see everything that's coming for us.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I was probably part of that, maybe the early 3000 wave. I don't think I was the earliest, but I feel like I found that TikTok video and then very quickly after,
Absolutely.
I think she posted something about the Discord and I was like, "Oh, get to learn how to use Discord, I guess."
Yeah.
Crash
Yeah.
course, let's go.
Yeah.
hmm
I was on the
hmm
Discord when it was like 30 people and the first group video chat we had was like
Oh.
8 people. And so and then like within 3 days I signed into the Discord like a couple of days later to check on things and it was over 2500 people. It was like crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. It was
So
amazing though. I'm
exciting.
super excited by
Ah,
the volume of people that came in and on that initial wave, but then that have been trickling in since then.
Yeah.
yeah. So what made you want to help with this project? What called you about this specific project? I'm sure that there's lots of other, places where there's people hopping on board and trying to do cool things. What about this project?
So what I really liked about Asterith is that when I came in at the beginning, it was really just a bunch of people from various backgrounds who I had never met before. This was literally our first interaction with each other. And I just went in and I just sat in on a voice chat and was listening to people talk and just figuring out like, okay, like what's going on? What are people discussing? And that's how I ended up meeting Raz, who was also one of the founders.
Mhm.
And he and I started, just kind of like going back and forth, being catty with each other, and it really started a whole friendship. And like from what I've seen in all of my time at Asterith, like that's the exact community that really kind of has drawn me and other people in is just this comfort of knowing that like there are other people who are just like you. So it was
Mhm.
very basic human instinct that really got me into this and made me like, okay, no, I could stick around and I could be a part of this. And then eventually it just became like one task after another, just putting our foot forward, saying like, hey, I can do this. Can someone do this? And then we just kept going and going. And the next thing we knew, there was, we looked backwards and a pathway had been forming. And here we are.
hmm Oh,
Nice.
excellent. So tell us more about what the things you were actually doing then. What
Okay.
was your little niche that you were creating
Come
for
on.
this wonderful thing, pathway we've built so far and
Brags.
castle? Dare I say the castle of Astrith?
We're
Yeah.
we're getting there. We're
Brag
getting there.
about your
Don't
legal
worry.
blob.
Go ahead, Bree.
Brag on the legal blob, man. Represent.
Oh man,
hmm
Person.
I'm so bad at bragging about things. Okay, so I am a legal individual by trade. So that's where I currently work in my day job in what I'll call the real world. And so I decided to use those skills that I had and move them into Asterith and figure out, okay, well, what can I do based off of the knowledge that I know, which is essentially like I love research. So research is my like, oh, I could literally just sit
Yeah.
down and spend 8 hours going depth into internet and books and figuring out, okay, I need to understand this subject. This is the hot topics that I'm seeing. Here's some deep dives that I found. And I pretty much used those skills to help create the initial documents that were necessary for Asterith. And then through that, I became part of the conversation of like, how do we want to incorporate, what kind of legal business entity do we want to be? Which I've had experience doing prior with one of my friends and myself. We opened our own companies. And so I took that knowledge and I just kind of forged forward and said, okay, this is what I have. This is where, I know what I can do. Let's create a discussion about it. And, Raz and I, we got together and we were throwing ideas around and we were reading into the community and figuring out like what they wanted. And then we started coming up with the Asterisk values and figuring out like, okay, so like this is what we're standing for. How do we incorporate that into the legal business? And so it really was a lot of that kind of back and forth. And it was mostly conversations for the first, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 months. It was all conversations with little tasks that were kind of just piling up. And I think it's within these last 3 months or so that I feel the largest piece of dedication has come, which has been drafting all kinds of necessary legal documents. We added on another legal person who's an actual attorney because I am not a licensed attorney. I will fully say that right now. Um, but we got a licensed attorney to come in and donate her time, volunteer her time, and she's been helping me to write up a lot of this stuff. So it's been a ride, I'll tell you.
Mm. If I remember
And such
correctly,
an important aspect.
yeah, sorry.
Go ahead,
if
Brave.
if I remember correctly too, like the first few months was basically organizing the Discord and how many people and volunteers there were, and people didn't really know how they wanted to get involved or how they could get involved because there was no leadership. Like
Hmm.
Tall Girl like had the idea. She said it on a
Hmm.
video that went viral, and then she was like, hey, why don't we get tech talk together and make an app by the people for the people that doesn't like get all greedy corporate and like start to take away like all the great creator tools and make it about making money for the investors. Why don't we get an app that is actually about community? And so for my what I remember, the first 3 months it was just like, wow, all these people from TikTok saw this video, came to the Discord and was like, hey, how can I help? And Togger was like, I just wanted, it was just an idea. Like, can I hand
Yeah.
this off to some people that know how to run this? Like, and so that's where like
Yep.
all these people that eventually have become founders, but like just people started to step up. Myself, Enchanter, Raz, more people, and which at like volunteering, people just organically started saying this is what I can do, and eventually some natural leadership
Yep.
formed, and eventually it was like, okay, who's got some skills? And from what I remember, Enchanter, you and Raz were really talking a lot about the company itself, like the organizational structure, because without
Hmm.
that, we can't start working on the app. We have to protect it legally. And so I remember you kind of talking about the articles of incorporation, the co-op ideas about whether this should be an LLC, a co-op. What are the other structures that could have been? It was like some other business structures that.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, yeah.
we had a couple structures in mind, such as like B Corp and C Corp. We were also looking at LLC, like you said, but also we were thinking about doing like a trust and nonprofit combination. So there was a couple things that floated around, and ultimately it came down to essentially being either an LLC, because it was very easy and something that you could just put up and go, or doing a co-op. And that one's a little more intricate, takes a little bit more planning and resource diving, figuring out like how can we actually do this in a particular state, what's involved with it. And we weighed the pros and cons of both of them, and really it came down to the values that we wanted to establish and figuring out like because you mentioned before we were trying very hard to stay away from like a hierarchy. So we figured was while an LLC could theoretically be put into a very full like Republican democracy kind of style, it was too tempting and not enough restriction to keep one individual from essentially owning the whole of Asterith and eventually the application that would come from Asterith. So that's when we started leaning more towards like the co-op side of it. And it was the co-op that allowed us more restriction and essentially control over who is in charge and how in charge they are. And really, when Raz and I went back and forth a lot on figuring out like how we could do this. Is it something that's worth with the people? I'm sorry, worth it for the people. And we did have quite a few people in the greater community who were saying, like, yeah, co-op would make sense because then you can do memberships, you can have a whole actual democracy, everyone gets a say. And so a lot of that really played into figuring out, okay, well, does this line up with the values? You know, check, 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 check. As we were going through and doing more research, we found out that like this is what we feel would be the best model. It's not the easiest model to go through because, you know, co-ops are not very well used in America. I think there's only like, if I remember correctly, 1900 co-ops in all of the United States,
Wow.
something like that. It's a very low
Hmm.
number, which I
Yeah.
mean, like you hear 1900 and you're like, well, that's a lot. And it's like, no, there's millions of businesses in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So 1900 is really just a drop in the bucket.
Wow.
But yeah,
Well,
so
tell
we
us more. Can you tell us more about this co-op model? Why is it such a good fit? Why are we so excited about it? How does it protect all of us so we all get to own, hopefully one day, a piece of this, but nobody gets to own the whole thing?
yeah, so in the baseline of what a co-op is, it's essentially employees coming together or a group of people coming together to become employees who own the entirety of the business. And what that looks like is they have typically they have a board of directors and they have then the employees who are doing essentially all the work. The board of directors can be very fluid as far as like who goes there and when they get elected and stuff like that, but they're not like the super important piece of it because they don't get to make the deciding factors. They're just a small, you know, let's say you have five board members. Each of those board members only has one vote in the greater concept of the co-op, and their vote is not stronger than an employee vote because in a co-op, it's employee owned, employee operated. So they each get a vote and they each get a sliver or a share of the co-op itself. And that's usually in the form of like paying a due, which could be monthly, yearly, when you know, whatever the co-op decides. And so a co-op, when formed in that way, more appropriately and more democratically, allows for an equal say over how the business itself is run, how the growth of it is determined. Because with an LLC, you essentially have like an exponential growth where as soon as people start putting money in, it's just going to skyrocket. But then that also releases power, meaning that the more investors you get into an LLC, the more you have to give up your own power to give to somebody else, who they can then buy the power of everybody else in there, and then ultimately you lose full ownership, which is like a minimum of 51%. But when you come back to the co-op, everyone's the same. There is no I have more shares than you. It's I have a vote, you have a vote, Brave has a vote. That's it.
Mm.
There's, you know, I can't buy more votes. I'm only allowed one vote.
That's
So
great.
that really played into the community giving power to the people, speaking on, you know, what it is that they want versus what it is that a small handful of quote unquote owners would want from this. And then board of directors just kind of they're the executive faces of the co-op. So they typically will help make like the grandiose decisions and put it to the floor for a vote and say like, hey, you know, fiscal year is coming up at the end of it, and we need to figure out like what our next budget is going to be. So here we whipped this up. Is everyone okay with it? Kind of scenario.
Mm.
I hope that
And you
answered it for
talk
you.
about oh, it did. It was wonderful.
Well, it's exciting.
The employee owners. But that's not just like us, right? It's not going to just be us in the future, ideally. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how, even if people don't necessarily volunteer for Asterith right now, do they have the opportunity to become member owners as well?
Yeah, so typically with a co-op, it's not just the employees who are allowed membership. It's people that have any kind of direct or indirect accommodation or um, like involvement with it. So, you're thinking vendors, investors, if we opened a grocery store, or in the concept of the app itself, it could be a user, it could be a content creator. These are people who have the option and ability to buy into it and have a say in what's going on in some way or another. Now, to get into the technical aspect of it, there are two types of membership in there, where one is employee, where you get voting rights, and the other one is non-employee, where you just get like a small piece of the dividend that is essentially dished out, but you have no real say in how the co-op itself works. So that's the technical part of it. And Raz and I, and then what it later evolved into Just Legal, have been working on are creating essentially bylaws which eliminate the possibility of somebody moving from one to the other and then potentially influencing the member voters in that way.
Mm.
That's,
Awesome, awesome.
So just so I
And
can.
that's why I'm excited about this because, oh,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead,
delay.
Brave.
I was just gonna sum up what I heard. That
Um,
dang it, the delay. All right, you go first. You go first.
so I was gonna say we're just so excited about that opportunity, not only for we want as many members as possible and employees to get involved, volunteering at first, but with this idea that we'll get to become actual owners with a vote, but also figuring out ways that we make sure to spread that wealth around to
Mhm.
everybody, including definitely content creators, but even possibly even the users of the app themselves, just the scrollers can get a little piece of that pie if the app is doing well. And we think it's going to do really well because it won't be crappy because a greedy company ruins it.
And that's honestly what we're trying to build on is we've been doing a lot of user research because we're trying to figure out what it is that people obviously want. And that's what you do when you're creating an application.
Mhm.
But we're not looking at just users, we're looking at content creators specifically because we have noticed an ongoing trend over the years where content creators are essentially getting the short end of the stick no matter what social media program they're on. So, we're thinking of different ways that we can benefit the content creator because they will essentially be the driving force of the application. They're going to be the people that not only bring in the other users who just want to do their doom scrolling like I do, but they're also going to be bringing in, a constant influx of advertisement when we go down that route. They're going to be the individuals who are doing a lot of the hard labor as far as the face value goes, because obviously there's going to be the employees who are working inside of it, working on the coding and everything like that. And I'm not trying to devalue them at all, but they can't do what they do without having somebody bringing in everybody else. And so we really wanted to focus a lot of the application itself on content creator, essentially reimbursement and like compensation, and figuring out how we can create the co-op to be the most beneficial and route forward for them.
Mm, that's cool.
Yes.
Just to
If
summarize.
we build it, we think they will come.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, summarize,
Classic
Brave.
quote. Classic quote. Field of Dreams for the younger generation. Uh, so, just as a quick summary about what a co-op is, because there was some legal jargon, and so for anybody not as familiar,
Mm,
basically, and even the process of how that was chosen was very democratic. That's one of Asterith's values, in that it was in public chats. There was a lot of stages where we announced to the Discord community, what do you guys think about these things? Any feedback from the key, stakeholders, the people that like know about legal jargon. And so it sounds like you guys went through a process of pros and cons, which you listed here about the LLC, but also the
mhm,
co-op sounds like it's the model itself will allow for the vision that basically it will not be corruptible with the articles of incorporation. So that is a step that still needs to be ironed out, is like, when we incorporate as a co-op, let us have these really great, kind of like a constitution, that won't be changeable,
mhm.
that will protect this company from going the route of every other small, startup tech company that was great at first because it was built by passionate people like founders that sold out to mega corporations who then enshittify the
Mhm.
whole app, right? And and so to
Right.
to protect our app from that inevitable capitalistic, kind of inevitability, you're saying a co-op with some very strong language, legal language in the articles, the bylaws, articles of incorporation, will become like this constitution that will keep it from being bought out or having a hostile takeover or anything else that could be motivated by greed or by profit over the people. And that's what I'm hearing. And so we're putting.
Yeah, so
Go
a,
ahead.
a co-op, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
A co-op in of itself is very much, I won't say immune, but definitely adverse to being bought out. So you can't own a cooperative. It's not possible for one entity to own all of the shares because then it's not a cooperative. It becomes an LLC or a corporation.
Mm,
Um, so with a co-op itself, there have owners, owners being the members. It has to be employee owned. A majority of the members who have voting rights have to be employees. So nobody can come in as like an investor and, let's just say that 15 investors conglomerate together and they decide that each of them are going to buy votes and those 15 votes outweigh, let's just say there's only 10 employees. So, I mean, instantly that gives them the majority. But because of the way that the co-op is built, it instinctually will not allow for anything more than 51% employee ownership.
mm,
If it does, then it ceases to become a cooperative, and it essentially just kind of like dissolves itself. And so that's like a natural thing that's built into the identity of co-ops. So we wanted to take that identity and then build, barriers and essentially a fortress around that. And that's where we came into the Articles of Incorporation and the bylaws together as what you were calling a constitution,
mm,
which essentially says it takes a lot of, the way that America, the United States, their constitution works is that you have to have a two-thirds majority to change anything, add any amendments or whatnot. And we're adopting that same kind of concept where you have to have a certain threshold to be met for there to be any changes done to the bylaws or the articles of incorporation, which will ultimately be a lot harder to change. And then, there's basic policies that are put into place for companies that change all the time. That would be the more fluid aspect of like, this is how we're going to do this. This is the programming that we're going to use on this. Whereas the Constitution, I'm now going to call them jointly, they'll be
mm.
called the Constitution.
Nice.
The Constitution itself is something that you have to give to the Secretary of State for whatever state you are incorporated in. And that document, it takes money to change.
Ah.
And especially for startup companies, like that's something that you don't want to be spending money on. So you essentially write it so that this is what we're going to build off of. And then from there, we'll make policies within ourselves that kind of change and adapt it. So that creates that fluid movement that people will need while there's a vagueness in the Constitution until they
Mm,
find something in the Constitution and they're just like, okay, well, we have to change that piece. So we'll shell out the $250 to change it.
mm,
And then you do that and you get all that. But essentially, all of this to sum down is we built a fortress. That's what I'm working on right now, is building walls to protect the cooperative itself from dissolving so that it can stand true and hold that application high and maintain what the content creators need so that they can have
mm.
a strong user base and then create a strong user base that then essentially feeds into itself and allows for the application to just become completely user friendly as best as possible.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. I think, there are the co-ops that do exist are like grocery stores, apartment
Hmm.
complexes, and a lot of agricultural stuff.
Hmm.
Sun-kissed, citrus growers, right? And so every one of those farmers, they want their autonomy, they want to keep their autonomy. But in the tech world, we might be the first like real tech startup
So,
cooperative, as far as I know. Do you know? Have you seen actually?
well,
Why am I even saying it? Enchanter, what have you seen out there for co-ops?
So for the sake of making sure that we're not telling lies and perjuring ourselves, no,
You
I'm just
get-
kidding. There are companies that have been co-ops. There's hundreds of them. But
Okay.
from my research, which hasn't been like super in depth, I did this maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, but from my research, there was maybe only one social media co-op that was created. And I don't believe that it exists anymore. So we would be the only standing social media that decided to be a co-op and is essentially run by its own employees.
Mm.
Because there's things like Steam. I believe Steam is essentially a co-op itself because its employees get to make all of the decisions about what happens. And I believe they still have a board of directors, which makes like executive decisions, but in the grand concept of it all. Now, don't quote me, I could be completely wrong. So if I am, please, don't cancel me. But yeah, so the co-ops exist in the tech world. They're not very well known, and the reason for that is because typically in the tech world, you need a set of people in charge for a specific reason, so that things can get done in a specific manner, and that everything moves more free flowing, and there's not a lot of, moving around of ideas.
Mm.
But with
Mhm.
that being said, we're willing to pioneer and we're willing to move forward and become one of the longer standing social media co-ops.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I love that idea that it's um we have some fluidity, we have a lot of structure as well. And yes, we might not be able to kind of turn on a dime like other organizations, but at the same time, having all this input, all these channels, all these perspectives, we think that's going to be a major strength and
Hmm.
allowing us to offer something that's going to be great for as many people as possible. Or, a lot of Americans we're focusing on because of the TikTok ban,
Mm-hmm.
of course, coming up, and how terrible American social media is. It's full of ads. It's just pretty awful
And
at this point.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we're looking to, there's ideas that are floating around about how we can make sure that ad interface is not overwhelming and in everybody's, space where every third video you're seeing some sort of application that's like, I'm advertising
Hmm.
this or whatnot. We can't get rid of it fully because it does take ad revenue to essentially fund a lot of tech companies.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that it doesn't become the powerhouse that it tends to be in social medias. And I
Mm.
say hoping, but I'm writing the laws for Asterisk so that we can minimize the damage that they done or
Yeah.
they will do
Yeah.
or could do and so
Yeah. And
that's
Good.
that's something that we're looking out for. But yeah,
yeah,
go
even
ahead,
in the
Brie.
Hmm.
UX, like if we do ads right, like see, there's a difference between exploitive ads or predatory ads, and where it's the greed motivating it, versus advertising small businesses in your area, or advertising businesses that
Hmm.
you actually care about and that actually have morality backed by them. Like there's a way we could do this and still
Yes.
make the money we need to support a tech company, because like you said, there are some very high and real costs associated with a social media platform, and we can't, we can be idealistic, but we also have to be realistic. And so, but there's a marriage between the
Hmm.
two, or like a partnership that we can find that other companies don't, because they're motivated by profit over the people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's something that again we're really looking into making sure that we focus point on is figuring out like how can we get content creators, small business owners, and give them that platform that's going to allow them to grow as entrepreneurs and become, financially independent from not only in the concept of like I'm making enough money that I can pay my bills, but also in the concept of I'm making enough money that I don't have bills. Like I never have to get like
Mm.
loans or I don't have to
Mm.
have any kind of like credit card debt if I didn't want to. Like I could use it because that's obviously part of the system and that's something that we can deal with later down the road is toppling the credit card industry, but let's focus on this one first. But
Totally.
essentially, like the idea and the concept is to make sure that we are providing a space for content creators in just in their specific area so that they become stronger, independent individuals that don't necessarily need us if they don't want us, but they
Mm.
can use us because we're going to be the best resource for them.
Mm. Great. That's
Yes, I
exciting.
love it. Creating a web of people who are independent, autonomous, but also caring, making good products, making good creative work, and people able to spend their money on it because they are then in turn making money, right?
Yep.
And
Hmm.
actually keeping the money in the network
Mm.
among the people. Even the scrollers can afford it because they might not be creating content, but maybe they have become members. And so they're getting that little check at the end of every quarter, year. I guess we'll figure that out later. Let's hope
TBA,
lots of money
TBA.
comes in there, right?
Yeah.
TVA, TVA. Let's hope there's lots of us involved and we all get a decent amount of money.
Yeah, that's what actually excites me about the future of Asterith and this app is like imagine a company setting a precedent in America at this late stage capitalism where where business is focused on with business ethics, that our focus is actually solving a problem in the world and actually meeting a real need, not generating false needs and fear mongering in order to sell products, but actually looking at what is the need. Here's a solution for it that you would want. So people are going to hopefully say, take my money, and throw it at us so that they can support this vision. And that if this precedent could succeed,
Mhm.
just like we've seen boycotts succeed, right? And checks the billionaire
Yep.
power in our country, where, like you're saying, Witch Hat
Mhm.
and Enchanter, when we get the money in Asterith, we're going to redistribute it. It's not going to sit in a billionaire bank account making them all the money that they don't need. It's going to come back to the people and get redistributed the way that it was meant to, with that original trickle
Mhm.
down that didn't end up being a trickle down policy. Like the trickle down
Trickle
economics is not
comics. Yeah.
trickling down. Yeah.
Mhm.
Something's
Not so
trickling, but
Yeah.
it's
not
not.
so well. But quick
It
quick
was
little
being
plug
raked
real
up.
quick.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to do a
Mhm.
quick plug because you were talking about protests. Everyone should
Boycotts.
go to Let Them Eat Cereal and be a part of what's going
Tall
on right
girls.
now. I believe right now we're doing Nesquik. No, not Nesquik. Who owns
Nestle?
Nestle? That's what it is. I believe
Nestle.
right now we're in the
Oh,
middle.
they're a
We
big
should
one.
be finishing Kellogg and we're moving into Nestle, if I
Yes.
remember
Mhm.
so everyone should go to that server as well in Discord.
Nice.
Tall girl will be like, excuse me, where is this influx of people coming from? Asterisk, you're a first child. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, we're returning the favor. You made us go viral. Now we're returning the favor for your other project.
Let's
Exactly.
hope. Let's hope. Okay, well, let's give some more help to people any mad person still watching this. How, Enchanter, how do you think people should get involved? What if anyone's interested in any of this craziness? What is your advice? What are you gonna send? What should people do now?
So first and foremost, I'm going to send you to our website because obviously I need you to go there and create traffic for us. But there's three avenues that we're currently working on, which is one, getting volunteers. We need people who have essentially any type of skill because it doesn't matter if you're really good at tech or if you only know a couple lines of code. We don't need you to fully be a tech person. I'm not a tech person. I do not know how to write code at all. I am strictly book and research kind of person. So I use my skills where is needed with Asterisk. So that means that anybody who has any type of skills, we could find you a place in here. So volunteering is going to be like the number one thing that I'm constantly going to be telling people, please come and donate your time, even if it's only like 4 hours a week. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us do 40, 45, I found out. That's a lot for a volunteer
Mm-hmm.
ship. But, if you're coming in once, twice a week and just kind of helping out on a project in marketing or in design,
Oops.
we would appreciate it. Second thing I would say is, if you don't have the time to donate your time, then go ahead and like drop a couple bucks in our volunteer bucket and just, help us to make sure that we're keeping this funded. We have I can't remember what it is that we're using right now, but we have, I think, a GoFundMe, not a GoFundMe. What is marketing? I'm calling on you. Don't we
Yeah.
have something
We're
coming up?
Yep.
yes, we are going to do an Indiegogo campaign. It is not live yet,
Not
but
live yet.
definitely go to the website.
It
Go
could
if you
be
go to
live by the time that we air this.
Oh,
We don't
that's
know.
true. I don't know. Put the information up here, future Sia. Oh, whoops, I
Yeah.
just outed myself. Future witch hat. Let me redo that. Put the information up here, future witch hat.
Yes.
Um,
But just to
but
bring it up,
definitely,
it's
it'll,
coming.
yeah. Yes, it's coming, and there's donation links on the website if
Mm-hmm.
you just want to throw a couple bucks. There's even an investor link on the
Mhm.
website. So if you early investor, you're like, Daddy Big Bucks, you got some money stashed
Not
into your
Daddy Big
mattress.
Bucks. Absolutely.
You wanna see some return on your investment? We already have the way too, don't we?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. It's something that we created definitely early on to make sure that if there were people who wanted to come in and donate, a hefty sum of money, that they could do that and that we had protections not only for Astrith, but for them as individuals. And they would fall under that category of membership but not employee. So there is a spot for you guys. And it's essentially just interacting with us and coming in here. And even if you can't donate time, even if you can't donate money, even if you can't be a large investor, there is still the concept
Hmm.
of coming in, seeing what we're doing, and then spreading the word and saying, like, hey, have you guys heard about this new social media company that's coming
Mm-hmm.
out? They're building an application based on content creation. Link them to us. Tell your content creator friends about us and let them come talk to us so that we can get all of the research that we need to understand what it is that they want from a social media company and how we can build a platform that is good for them and then ultimately good for the community.
Awesome.
Yes, yes. And we should hopefully be on social media at the point that you're watching this. We should have TikToks up. So follow us on TikTok. I hope we get into threads and some of the other stuff too. We'll see. Hopefully podcasts in the future. Lots of big plans. So come
Many plans.
aboard. We
Yes.
need you. There's going to be lots of fun stuff happening. Maybe I'll interview you in the future.
That's right.
Ooh,
And there will be
I like
more guest
Ooh.
that. Someone
interviews.
watching this right now.
Yeah.
We love
Yeah, yeah.
interviews.
Cool. Well,
Yes.
hey, this was
Oh,
a
but this
great,
one must come to an end.
yep. This is a great first interview, first podcast. Enchanter, thanks for being our guinea pig. And
Of course, I love being experimented on. It's great.
but yeah,
For
and
science.
Witch Hat, thank you
It's
for
for science.
thanks for hosting and just being, a great interviewer. But yeah, any final parting words before we end the scene and hit
I'm
stop
sorry that
record?
everything is turning dark in my room. It's getting nighttime, and I
Yeah.
don't have really good lighting. I apologize.
Well,
I do
I,
have really good
you
lighting.
do actually. You look
Witch Hat knows what's
fabulous.
up. That's why you're
I
in marketing and I'm in legal. I just sit in a
that's
dark hole and I read
that's
books.
true. Go back to where you belong.
I'm already there.
Um Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you guys,
Thank
and I
you.
hope we'll get to chat more and see each other soon.
Yep. See you on TikTok.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, girls.
Yep. All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.